Imagine waking up with a quiet, unsettling thought. What if the life I'm living isn't actually mine? Not in a dramatic way, more like a slow suspicion that your beliefs, your ambition, even your personality might be a product of conditioning, a script you learned to perform. And the scariest part is this: you can live your entire life playing the role and never notice. Carl Jung's insight was simple and brutal. Life doesn't truly begin until you find yourself. But finding yourself isn't a motivational slogan. It's a psychological process, a confrontation. Because the version of you that feels normal might be the version that keeps you stuck. So let's break it down. Jung believed psychological growth isn't just feeling better. It's individuation, the process of becoming a whole person. Not a better mask, not a more impressive identity, but someone real. The problem is most people never start that journey. They spend their lives chasing external validation, approval, status, belonging, success. And even when they win, they still feel that background tension, like something is missing. That tension is a clue. It's what happens when you build a life that looks right from the outside, but doesn't fit the inside. 1. The persona. The mask you mistake for you. From childhood, you were trained. You learned what gets rewarded, what gets punished, what gets called too much, too weak, too sensitive, too unrealistic, too arrogant. So you adapted. You hid the parts that didn't get love. You amplified the parts that got approval. And slowly, you built what Jung called the persona, the social mask that helps you function, survive, and get accepted. The persona isn't evil. You need it. You can't walk into the world with zero filter. But the danger is this: most people don't wear the persona. They become it. They confuse performance with identity. They stop asking, is this me, or is this just what gets me accepted? 2. The shadow. What you bury becomes your master. And here's the other side of the mask. If the persona is what you show, the shadow is what you hide. Your fears, your jealousy, your anger, your neediness, your insecurity, your selfish impulses. And, this is important, your hidden strengths too. Because the shadow isn't only dark. Sometimes your shadow is your confidence, your intensity, your ambition, the parts of you that got shut down early so you learned to suppress them. But here's Jung's key point. What you repress doesn't disappear. It goes underground. And from there, it controls you in subtle ways. It shows up as anxiety, self-sabotage, repeated relationship patterns, unexplained irritation, a life that feels off even when it looks good. 3. Projection. Why some people trigger you instantly. This is where it gets surgical. Have you ever disliked someone fast, before they even did anything serious? Or felt intensely triggered by a trait in someone else? Arrogance, weakness, neediness, attention-seeking, laziness. Jung would say, pay attention, because often the reason it hits so hard is that it touches something in your shadow. Projection is when you unconsciously spot something in another person that you refuse to see in yourself. So instead of owning it internally, you fight it externally. That's why certain people feel like they pull something out of you. They're pressing on the hidden part you don't want to admit exists. And this is the turning point. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your missing piece. 4. Integration. The moment you stop lying to yourself. Most self-improvement tries to delete the shadow. Be positive. Don't be angry. Kill the ego. Never feel fear. Jung's approach is different. He says growth is not about elimination, it's about integration. Integration means you stop pretending the shadow isn't there. You face it, name it, understand it, so it stops controlling you unconsciously. Because what you bring into awareness becomes a choice. What you keep unconscious becomes a reflex. This is why life begins when you find yourself, because until then, you're mostly running scripts. 5. A practical example. Fear of rejection. Let's make this real. Fear of rejection is everywhere. It makes people please, avoid conflict, stay quiet, soften opinions, chase approval. But Jung would ask, where did this fear come from? Is it really about them, or is it an old wound, being dismissed, humiliated, abandoned, unseen? If you don't face it, it drives your decisions from behind the scenes. But when you finally confront it, without excuses, without drama, something shifts. You stop needing everyone's approval to feel stable. You stop shrinking to stay safe. You stop building your identity around avoiding discomfort. That's freedom. 6. How do you begin? You don't need to disappear to a mountain or reinvent your whole life overnight. Start with awareness and pattern recognition. Here are 3 simple entry points. First, Notice what you overreact to. Strong emotional reactions are often shadow signals. Second, notice what you compulsively avoid. Avoidance is a map. It points to the area where growth is locked. Third, pay attention to your inner language. The repeated stories you tell yourself, "I'm not that type of person. I can't do that. That's not me." Sometimes those are not truths. They're old protections. And if you want a deeper doorway, Jung would say, watch your dreams, your symbols, your creative impulses. Your unconscious speaks in patterns, not paragraphs. 7. The core message. Most people don't find themselves because it's uncomfortable. It requires admitting you've been performing. It requires seeing your own contradictions. It requires accepting that you are not only your good traits, but the reward is huge. When you integrate what you've rejected, you become harder to manipulate, harder to trigger, harder to shame, harder to control, because you're not running from yourself anymore. And that's what Jung meant by life beginning. Not when you get more status, not when you look successful, not when people validate you. Life begins when you stop living as a mask and start living as a whole man. So here's the question that ends this video. What part of you have you been avoiding because you're afraid of what it would mean if you admitted it's real? That's where you start.